There's no better time than right now to start growing your own food. And it doesn't matter how much space you've got, there's going to be an option for you if you start growing in containers. Now for those of us who don't have a big garden, we're very limited for space, and that means we're growing in containers. So in this limited area, we want to make the most of every square inch that we have, and that's what we're going to be showing you how to do. We believe that there's room for a growing container in every location, like we've said, but space isn't the only thing you need for plants. Top of the list is going to be light. And this is why choosing a location that's really sunny is going to be your #1 priority when you're choosing where to put your containers. Now, as we said, light is super important for plants. So if you find your sunniest location and there's still not enough light there to grow the plants you want, you could possibly supplement that light with artificial light, get some LEDs or something. But we'll talk about that in a different episode. Now, after we've thought about light, we've got to think about weather and how we can protect our plants from extreme weather conditions. They just don't like being blown around. We can lose leaves, we can lose stems, and that's just not good for them. They're going to be unhappy plants. So you've got the best location available to you. You figured that out. What's next? Container choice. You have to decide which container is best for your different plants. So now we're going to have to talk about dimensions of our containers. If you want big plants, you need to have a bigger pot. You can't grow a large plant in a small pot. It's just not going to happen. There's an old saying that big roots mean big fruits. So what's going on under the soil is really important here. You've got to make sure your plants have a lot of space to grow and achieve their maximum potential. Whatever size container you choose, one of the most important things for that container to provide your plants is good drainage. So if you ever wondered what the holes were for in the bottom of pots, there's your answer. It also comes down to material choice. Now, if you choose a plastic pot, it's not going to allow any water to evaporate from the sides. With something like terracotta, that will allow water to escape, so it's going to be a different drainage situation. Same thing goes with this cocoa coir kind of material. Water comes out of it easily, so you're not going to have to worry about that drainage. Before we introduce our new plants to their new home, we want to make it as welcoming for them as possible. And it's essential that we use a good compost if we want to do that. Our compost is providing a few different functions for our plants. So we've got nutrition. Now, there's lots of organic matter in this compost I've got here. That's going to provide all the food that the plants need through their life to feed them and make sure they're healthy. As well as that, we need drainage and water retention. Now, adding something like perlite, and if you can see these little white bits in this compost I've added, that adds drainage. It makes sure any excess water can easily escape from the bottom of the pot. Water retention is the other aspect we've talked about. Now that means that all that organic matter inside the pot is going to hold on to water like a sponge. So it's not too much water, it's going to drain out any excess water from the bottom, but it will hold on to just enough water to provide the plants with what they need. Now you've got your containers in their location, filled with good compost. It's time to get growing, and you want to squeeze as much food out of this limited space as you can. And one of the best ways to do that is to companion plant. Now I'm going to go into a lot more detail in another video for you on this, but in this instance all it means is putting more than one kind of plant in the same pot. And if they get along, they can support each other and provide different functions, help each other out. Now, since these containers don't have as much room as open ground, you're going to have to choose the right varieties. And it's important to realise as a container gardener that there are so many different kinds of plants out there. I mean, if you just look at broccolis, you can probably find hundreds, beans, maybe thousands. But choosing the right one is going to mean you can be very productive. Now, this is a great example over here. I've got a tomato variety, it's called Tumbling Tom. It's a variety which is going to grow over the side of the pot and make use of all this wasted space around the container. Now, we mentioned how you can get tomato varieties which hang off the edge of the pot. With strawberries, they all hang off the edge of the pot. And if you've got a vertical area that you can install a hanging basket, it's a great way to make the most of that space which you might otherwise not use. Plus, you get some delicious strawberries. Beans have got a really cool ability to climb, and we mentioned this last week in our Easy Veg video. If you haven't checked that out already, have a look at it here. And if you've got space to install a trellis or even just a bit of wire like I have, that opens up a lot of options for making use of your vertical areas. Beans are really productive and they're going to climb up the trellis really fast and produce a lot of food for you. Now, we don't want you to think constraint of having to grow in containers is a bad thing. There are so many advantages to it that we want you to consider. If you've ever grown in the ground before, then you know that there's a constant battle with weeds. Not so in containers. It's really easy to control those weeds. There are other advantages too. When it comes to watering, we've mentioned setting up for drainage, and if you've got good drainage, it's easy to make sure your plants have enough water. As well as that, you've got the mobility of the containers. If there's a storm coming, if there's bad weather or some conditions that you need to get them out of, you can bring them in and then take them back out afterwards. If you're growing in the ground, you're stuck. You could lose your plants. Hoping I've inspired you to give growing a go here. If I have, one last thing I'll say is to make sure you put the effort in at the start of growing your plants. If you set things up correctly at the beginning, it's going to be so much easier halfway through or at the end of the season. You're not going to have problems that you have to work out later. So just to sum up those points, guys, we've gone over location. Location is everything to making sure that the plants get light. Then we've got container selection, making sure they get good drainage. Then we've got plant selection, making sure you've got the right plant for the size of container and the space you have. That includes choosing plants which can go vertical if you've got that option. And lastly, making sure you put in the work to set things up correctly at the start. We really hope that helped you guys. Next week we're going to be talking about sowing a seed, so don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you next week.